The World Without Visas. Around the World with Valery Shannon. The trip across Taiwan became the next stage of the World Without Visas project, within which Valery Shannon travels only around the countries visa-free for Russians. Taiwan, temples and mountains. Taiwan is a small island. It is about 500 kilometers from north to south and 100 from west to east. In 1514, the Portuguese fishermen who saw it first among Europeans called the island Formosa, that means fine, while more pragmatic Chinese call it Taiwan or Legit Gulf. Historically, Taiwan remained as the last center of traditional Chinese culture, while during the 20th century, in continental China, there were continuous wars and later the destructive Cultural Revolution. Here, everything remained untouched. An array of monuments of traditional Chinese, Japanese, and European colonial architecture have preserved in Taiwan. It is in addition to the picturesque mountain landscapes and fine climate. Practically all western coast represents a huge urbanized zone. It is sometimes difficult to distinguish where one city comes to an end and another begins. But should we move from the coast slightly towards the central regions, rural areas with rice fields and palm groves instantly begin to appear. And a little more further to the east, the rivers, lakes, and mountain ridges. Our travel begins in Taipei. Exactly here, in the capital of Taiwan, there is an international airport. The trains that look more like electric ones depart as regularly as the underground trains. The regular ones stop at each post, while express trains do only several stops on the way to the south. There are no sleepers available in them. The island is small. It can be crossed in a day in any direction. From Taipei, we are going on a trip to the south, along the western coast of the island. The railroad passes through the most densely populated areas and the largest cities of the country. The first stop is the city of Zhanghua, the place of crossing of all railway tracks. Directly by the station, there is a Buddhist temple, thousands of lights. It is the most ancient in the city, although it is not the biggest. In the park on the mountain of 8 trigrams, or in Chinese, pagodas, they have built a grandiose temple complex. However, this hill is called the mountain, being only about 400 meters high, for the sake of bigger solidity. But the place is significant, with a view. There used to be a military base here, and now it is the place of a cult. The 22-meter high statue of the sitting Buddha serves as a landmark. Near the Buddha, there is a multi-storied temple, 2 towers, and a pond with sacred fishes. As it is known to any Buddhist, Buddha himself was also a fish in one of his reincarnations. As in any Buddhist temple, there is a place here not only for Buddha, but also for numerous characters from the ancient Chinese myths. The Confucian Monastery, or better to say, what is left of it after the fire in 2006, looks much more modest. This place is not for prayers, but for education. The city of Longshan is famous for its temples. Today it is a small town on the territory of Changhua County, but prior to the beginning of the 20th century, it was the second largest city in the largest port of the island. At the times when Taiwan was colonized by the Dutch, the Servine skins were exported from here. The railroad has not reached the city and the harbor has shoaled. the city began to quickly decay, but specifically thanks to this, it has preserved so well. The Temple of Longshan, decorated with wood carvings and devoted to the goddess of mercy Guanyin, is a real work of art. It attracts not only pilgrims, but also numerous tourists. Lukang was a seaport since ancient times. Therefore, it is not surprising that the main temple is dedicated not to Confucius or even to Buddha, but to the Chinese goddess of the sea, Matsu. However, she is not the only one here. The temple is filled with images of numerous Chinese gods and spirits. Literally, everyone will find his or her god patron here. With the nightfall, the city steeps in slumber, and the temple starts shining with thousands of candles, icon lamps, bulbs, and lanterns. The spot of light attracts here everybody who does not sleep. Whole families come here, with wives and children. We are returning to the railroad and continuing further to the south. All Taiwan's railway lines are electrified. The locomotives remained, but only as museum exhibits. The main railway of the country passes across the western coast, strictly from the north to the south. At the station of Ershui, a narrow-gauge railway branch turns to the east. The rail lines were laid on rural territories, beside the rice fields, sugarcane plantations, palm groves, and villages. Here begin the distant spurs of the mountain range, stretching along the center of the island. The rail line, about 30 kilometers long, finishes with the dead end at the Chechen station. It appears already in the foothills, near the hydroelectric power station of the Shizong River. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was a sawmill here. It doesn't work anymore. The workers were replaced by the tourists. From the Chechen station, buses go to the Sun and Moon Lake. Here, for some reason, it is called not in Chinese, but in English, Sun Moon Lake. Earlier, it was known as the Candida Lake, in honor of the Dutch missionary Georgie Candid, who in the 17th century acquainted natives with the true belief. The largest lake of Taiwan divides the island of Lala, connected with the coast, into two parts. The Sun Moon Lake is one of the largest tourist centers of Taiwan. The Lala Island is completely built up with hotels and restaurants. Nobody sleeps here at night. There is no time for it. The lake's cruise vessels depart from the wharf. For the fans of healthy lifestyle, the walking tracks were laid along the coast. One of them is called the Chiang Kai-Shek Trail, in honor of the first president of the Chinese Republic of Taiwan. As a pensioner, he liked to take his leisurely walks here, even without his bodyguards. On the trail, by foot. On the bank of the lake, there were two Buddhist temples. During the Japanese occupation of the island, they have constructed a dam and the water level has risen. In 1938, the temples had to be moved to a new place, far from the coast, on the hilltop with the view. So this is how the Wenwu Temple appeared, that has become one of the main tourist sites of the lake. Several buildings are filled with statues, sign plates, small lamps, and handbells. The fountain is interesting not because of its architectural elegance, but due to the fact that water comes here from the hot springs. The surrounding mountains only seem to be silent and peaceful. The volcanic activity goes on, therefore the earthquakes are not rare. The only hope is for the aid of higher forces, and the best way to achieve their grace and prayers and sacrifices. Therefore, temples are never empty here. The next part along the coast is possible and necessary to do by train.
How you doing?
Before it was possible to go inside the mountains by the railway, there is a narrow-gauge railway line, but it has suffered during one of the numerous typhoons, and now only a small part of it works in the mountains, not connected with anything. The National Nature Park of Alishan occupies the territory of about 400 square kilometers near the Yushan Mountain, the highest mountain top of the island. On the territory of the park, there are mountains that were overgrown with a damp rainforest with huge trees, rapid rivers with picturesque falls, tea plantations, and resort villages. The railroad was constructed by the Japanese in 1912 for wood transportation. Later, it started to carry the tourists. Only a small part works today. The trees that were not cut down by the Japanese are now protected by the government. It is not even possible to come close to them. It damages the roots. The wooden paths were laid for the tourists. The stairs and bridges were made. The Temple of Shuzhen, the largest called construction in the Alishan Mountains. It is located at the altitude of 2,150 meters above sea level. It is almost always shrouded in fog. The Temple of Shuzhen is dedicated to the local gods, who are responsible for justice and commerce, and also to the goddess responsible for fertility. This is why there are always so many women here. Local warm and humid climate is ideal for tea cultivation. Thanks to rather low temperatures, constant fogs and drizzles, the level of theanine in the tea leaves increases. This is why the local tea Alishan Wulong also differs by its saturated sweet taste. There are many tourist tracks in the park. The most popular one leads to the observation deck, from where it is possible to see the most beautiful sunrise in Taiwan. From this exact platform, you are supposed to enjoy the sunrise. At the moment, of course, there is no visibility. The weather is cloudy. It is already 8 a.m., but there is no sign of sun.
Часов 8, но никаких признаков появления солнца нет.
Tainan, the fourth largest city of Taiwan and one of the oldest in the country. In the second half of the 18th century, it was the capital of the Dongning state and later, up to 1887, of all Taiwan. Therefore, there are so many historical and architectural monuments here. They were built by all, Aboriginals, Chinese, and Europeans. Tainan was founded as Dunda, or, as translated from Chinese, the eastern capital. It became the capital city in 1661 when the national hero of Zhang Chenggong expelled from the island the odious Dutch colonialists. The first Confucius Temple in Taiwan was built here. It hosted the first school. It occupied half of the temple complex. The second half were temples and chapels. The Tower of Chiang remained from the fort of province built in 1653 by the Dutch on the place of the Aboriginal village of Saki. Near the train station, it is worth glancing at the city park to admire the blossoming lotuses, if, of course, the timing is right. In Tainan, known as the City of 100 Temples, it is possible to find a multitude of cult constructions. They are dedicated to Buddha and Confucius and also to Chinese gods and local spirits. The temple of the god of war, Guandi, was founded in the middle of the 17th century during a short era of Taiwan's independence from the 7-tier pagodas of the dragon and the tiger, connected with the coast by the winding 9-angle bridge. The lake enjoys wide popularity among locals. There is always a lot of people here, especially in the evenings when the day's heat subsides and the temples and pagodas are illuminated by the lights. The travel around the island of Taiwan is coming to an end in Kaohsiung, and the project World Without Visas continues. Ahead are the new travels across the countries, visa-free for Russians.